Motivation alone is not enough to get you to where you want to go. You might have gas in the tank in your car, but if your transmission isn't working, your alternator's not working, your battery's not working, how are you going anywhere? Even though you have fuel in the tank, you cannot move that car. You're not going to be able to go anywhere. So yes, motivation is important. You got to have fuel in the tank, but you got to have these other pieces in order as well. And that's what we're going to talk about on this episode. So let's go ahead and dive in. What's going on, everyone? Welcome to another episode of the Success Spectrum podcast. I'm your host, Kadeem, and today we are talking about why motivation alone is not enough to accomplish your goals, your dreams, your desires. Motivation is absolutely important. So let's just start there. Motivation, I don't want to say necessarily it is a requirement. You got to know why you're doing what you do. And I'm a big proprietor, if you will, of motivation. I listen to it regularly, of course, in the mornings as part of my morning routine. However, is it the most critical piece? Arguable. And it's not the only piece. Definitely. Right? So that's what we're going to talk about today. So first of all, let's talk about the difference between motivation and discipline. That's the main topic. Motivation, by definition, the reason one has for acting or behaving a particular way. Discipline, on the other hand, showing a controlled form of behavior or way of working. So what's the difference? The difference is motivation is what drives you to get going, right? To get started. But discipline is what keeps you going, helps you to maintain that action. If you feel stuck financially, I wrote a book for you, and it's called Your Wings of Abundance, your strategic guide to uplift and empower you to financial overflow. This book was written with you in mind. If what I'm about to say resonates with you, then this is exactly for you. I wrote this book from the perspective of seeing my mother raise 6 kids on her own. Right? Take care of us, pay the bills, go to work 2 or 3 jobs at a time. I wrote this book from the perspective of things that I went through financially in life, not having the financial knowledge, no one really stopping to teach me anything about finances, not knowing really what investments are or how they work, right? Knowing maybe 1 or 2 things, thinking I knew it all, but had no idea. So if any of these things resonate with you, go ahead and click that link in the description and get yourself a copy. If you know anybody that it resonates with, do the same for them. All right. It's almost the holiday season. Give them the gift of financial literacy, financial education. Motivation, your why. Why are you doing something, right? The fuel you have in your tank, again. Discipline, the other pieces of the vehicle that help you to keep going, right? The initial start, motivation. Discipline to maintain. So again, both pieces are important. Just because you're motivated, though, doesn't mean you're going to take action, sustained action, I should say. You need to get started, but to sustain, you definitely need discipline. So how to build discipline through habit and routine. And I'll say this to start. I did an episode on habits, episode 5, I believe it was, building better habits. So I'll link that somewhere, or I'll make it pop up somewhere on the screen. But if you're unfamiliar with habits, it ties directly into this episode. Go back and listen to that episode because it's vital, and then come back and listen to this one. So how to build discipline through habits and routines? Start small. Let's say you want to read more pages. You want to read more for a longer period of time. Instead of trying to aim for 40 minutes every day or in one sit down, start with 5 minutes, because 40 minutes is a good chunk of your day. Yes, you'd like to get there, but maybe you don't start there. Maybe you start with 5 minutes a day. Instead of trying to read a chapter a day, which might be 15, 20 pages, try reading 2 pages a day. Start small and focus on the discipline in doing that, right? That's your 1%. You talk about the 1% rule. If you do that regularly, eventually you're going to keep doing more, and you might start off with 2 pages, but a week down the road, you're probably reading 5, right? Another week, you might be reading 8. The next week, maybe 10, 15, because you're getting used to it. It's a discipline where it's going to become a habit. Now, to develop this discipline through habits and routines, set clear goals. So then the question I have is, are you aiming to wake up at a certain time? Right? What's your goal? Again, are you aiming to read that chapter a day, those 40 pages a day, that for 40 minutes a day, let's say? Are you aiming to call more clients regularly? What is it you are aiming to do? You got to have a reason why you're doing what you do, know what you're aiming for, and know why you're aiming for it, right? Because again, there's that motivation, but there's that discipline. What are you aiming for? If you don't know what you're aiming for, you're aiming for a target that doesn't exist. Therefore, you're not going to hit anything. Set that clear goal. Create a routine that saves you energy and effort instead of having to decide what or when to do the thing every day, which takes up, mental resources, I'll call it. Decide beforehand. Put it in your calendar. Create an agenda. My calendar essentially rules my day. If you look at my calendar, you see all the colors and so on and so. It looks ridiculous. People see it and they're like, oh my gosh, is that your calendar? Yes. I'm not trying to pretend to be busy or anything, but I put things in there so I don't forget. So again, create a routine, schedule it out. Cues and triggers. Now, again, this goes back to that previous episode, episode 5. Cues and triggers. Essentially, in a nutshell, this is a forced reminder, let's call it, to help you take action and stick to that habit. If you want to drink more water, keep your water bottle with you. You want to go for a run in the morning, put your shoes by the door. You want to have coffee on your way to work instead of buying coffee on the way to work. You want to make it at home, put out your mug and put out the coffee beans or however you make your coffee on the counter. So in the morning, it's a reminder. It's there for you. That's the trigger. That's the cue. So you're setting things in place already to help you to stick to that habit, stick to that new routine that you put in place. 5, you can track your progress, of course, and it ties into number 6, which is accountability, because there's applications out there on your phone that you can utilize. I used to use one many, many years ago called Fabulous. You can use it for tracking your water intake. You can use it for creating a new habit that doesn't even fit on there, right? A custom habit that you have in mind, and you can track it and say, did I do this today? Did I do it by this time or whatever? And it'll give you reminders throughout the day based on what you set for you to stick to that habit, right? A reminder, say, hey, did you do this? Right? Oh, shoot, not yet. Maybe remind me in 15 minutes. So that's one way. Of course, friends, family, coworkers, colleagues, business partners, these are all people that you can utilize as a resource, let's say, to keep you accountable as well, or a coach or mentor, right? Strategies now for staying disciplined when unmotivated, because we're not always motivated. Motivation is, again, something that can waver and does waver, which is the point of this episode. Because if you are unmotivated, are you still going to stick to that thing you said you were going to do? Stick to that promise you made to yourself. That's why we're having this conversation today, because oftentimes if we're unmotivated, I don't feel like it. I don't necessarily have the drive I did yesterday, so I don't think I'm going to do it today. You are selling yourself short, because forget about the energy. Forget about the why per se in terms of your motivation, right? Or let me rephrase that. The why is important. You started this for a reason. You lacking the motivation, the energy to do it has nothing to do with anything. That's just how you feel. When feelings are not facts, as I've heard Uncle E say many times, right? Eric Thomas. Feelings are not facts. It's a feeling, and you're entitled to your feelings, but do it anyway. Get up, get out, stick to that gym routine, stick to that water intake, stick to that reading routine, whatever routine you set up to make those calls, to call your parents, to call your child, to tell them you love them, whatever it is you're setting up, or whatever discipline, rules, goals, routines that you're trying to set up, make sure you stick to it regardless of your feelings. If you want to learn to amass your wealth in stocks, bonds, real estate, in commodities, if you want to learn how to protect your wealth or transfer generationally down the line in the way that you want it to be transferred, this book right here is a must read for you. The Legacy of a Silver Spoon, Managing Wealth and Relationships by Al Compton. You must get yourself a copy because you need it. If you want to do anything that I just mentioned, without reading this book, you're not going to be able to do it in the way that you want to get it done. You might not even know that there's different types of trust or which type of trust you need. This book will help you in determining that. You might not even know what a stock is or what a bond is. This book will teach you every piece of information you need to know financially to get you from where you are to where you want to be. Go ahead and click that link in the description to get yourself a copy. So remember your why, right? That's one thing, again, that can help you stick to that. When you're unmotivated, what is the reason you started to do this? Why did you start this discipline, this routine in the first place? Why did you put this in place? Why did you even think to do this thing? If you don't do it, is it moving you closer or further from your goal? Of course, we know the answer, but in moments like that, sometimes you got to ask yourself so that you can just say, okay, I'm getting up and I'm doing it. I know what I'm here for. I know what I want to do. I know why I started this thing. Let me stick to it. Let me keep the promise I made to myself. Number 2, routines over feelings, which I kind of said already. Stick to that routine. You set up that routine for a reason. Who cares about how you feel? If you're not, mind you, if you're not in a place where, again, chemical imbalances, or you don't got to go to the hospital, you're hospitalized as an emergency, outside of those, I just don't feel like it today. I woke up on the wrong side of the bed. Let me give you a news flash. First of all, I'm human, so I understand. But secondly, those are all excuses. Those are all excuses. Listen, I am at the office, right, recording an episode on a Sunday night at about 8 or 9 p.m. today. I normally record in the morning at about 7 to 8 a.m. Why am I here at this time? Because my morning didn't go the way I wanted it to, per se, right? The way I intended it to, I should say, the way it normally does. However, I still need to record my episode so I can release it on time for those people who are expecting me to release it on time, so I can help the people that listen to this, right? So that I can help the people who I feel I'm called to help, right? So if I set a routine, I set something in place, it's expected, I expect it of myself, and others are expecting me to release certain content on a certain time frame, right? Not that I think per se this is going to save somebody's life, but who knows? It could. But at the end of the day, it's something I set in place to say, Kadeem, Sundays, you record. You record on Sundays. I didn't get to do it earlier, but here I am. I'm still here on a Sunday recording. Regardless of me wanting to be in bed, regardless of me not wanting to drive 40 minutes to get to the office and then drive 40 minutes back home, regardless of how my head might feel because of lack of sleep, it doesn't matter. Get it done. I know what reason I gave myself essentially for starting this podcast and for sticking to this routine. So I only share that to impress upon you. It's the same for you. What is that reason? Stick to that reason. Rather remember that reason and stick to that habit you set in place, that routine, right? And again, the cues, the triggers, those are vital. So go back to that previous episode and listen to it, because again, it'll help you to set the proper cues and triggers and really understand the formulation of a habit, right? Because there's a few steps in there. It'll really help you to understand that for staying disciplined when unmotivated. Minimize distractions. I want to say eliminate, but to be honest, you won't be able to eliminate all of them. It's just a matter of overcoming them in your mind even before they come up, right? Again, outside of emergencies, but minimize distractions. Put your phone on silent. Put an alarm on your phone so that you know you don't miss the time that you had to leave to get to a certain place to do the activity you said you wanted to do, to stick to that routine. Put a reminder in your phone weekly or daily. Read. You need to read 5 pages, read 2 pages, read 10 pages, right? If you're reading multiple times a day, whatever time in the morning, 5 a.m., 6 a.m., read 2 pages. 12 p.m., read 2 pages. 8 p.m., read 2 pages, right? Drink water, drink a bottle of water, same time frame, in the afternoon, in the night. Whatever rules you set in place, you want to minimize distractions and set yourself up so that you can remember to do the activity. And that's why that app I mentioned earlier, Fabulous, is I don't get any money for Fabulous, but Fabulous is vital or important, and not Fabulous per se, but accountability. Because again, it's those reminders to say, hey, Kadeem, did you do this yet? Right? So here's the thing about all of this. It all sounds tedious. It all sounds annoying, if you will, because it's like, I gotta be disciplined, really? And honestly, this is the honest truth. Not most times, but oftentimes when I'm disciplined, let's say, mind you, I'm human. Do I have my faults? Absolutely. Am I always disciplined? No, I don't think so. However, when I have the thoughts, let's say, and I'm doing something like today, for example, I have the thoughts of, why am I doing this? Why am I being disciplined? Afterwards, it's like, okay, I got my reward. And I'll say this, to that point, don't seek an external reward, because this is something where, yes, depending on whatever habit goal you set up, there will be an external reward eventually. But the more immediate reward, and I think the more important reward, is intrinsic. It's inside. And that reward is the feeling of growth, the feeling of change, evolution that occurs within you, and the feeling of your self-confidence growing because you're keeping the promises you made to yourself. You're trusting yourself, and you know that you can now rely on yourself because you're keeping the promises you made to yourself. You said, I'm going to get up at this time, and then you worked on getting up at that time. It may not be 5 a.m. right away or 4 a.m. right away, but maybe you wake up 30 minutes earlier every week until you get to that 5 a.m. or that 4 a.m. And then you, of course, stick to the routines that you put in place for those mornings, right? The biggest reward, I would argue, yes, you may get those tangible rewards down the road. We don't know when, but eventually. But the biggest reward is that self-confidence, that trust in yourself, that having a stronger and better relationship with yourself and knowing you can rely on yourself. That is huge. So that's the reward that I focus on. And that's the reward I'd recommend that you focus on as well. All right. So that's it for this episode. Hopefully it was helpful for you. Hopefully you're able to take it again and utilize it to actually take action and get yourself that more self-confidence, those rewards we just talked about. All right. So again, remember, every step you take is taking you one step closer to becoming the next best version of you. All right. I'll see you on the next one.